Well, good morning, everyone. So, on the bulletin, our budget for this time of the year is $266,153, and we are at $272,472. How amazing is that? You all are incredible. It's amazing. I don't know that I'm ready to quite declare it a miracle on the basis of the raising of Lazarus, but I will say it is certainly extraordinary, and you are incredible. So if you have the orange outline, that's where we are going to be as we talk about developing spiritual growth and maturity. If a child never develops fully, there is a problem, right? And as a parent, you would be very worried because all human beings grow. It is a principle that is true spiritually. If we never develop in our spiritual lives, there is a problem. And this is what Paul said in Ephesians chapter 4. We are not meant to remain as children. So it is not God's purpose, spiritually, that we remain as children. We are not meant to remain as children at the mercy of every chance wind of teaching, but we are meant to hold firmly to the truth in love and grow up in every way into Christ the head. So, if you would circle, hold firmly and grow up. According to this passage, spiritual maturity is two things. Number one, it is holding firmly to the truth in love. And number two, it is growing up and becoming like Christ in our feelings and actions. It takes more than sitting in church to grow up spiritually, as great as that is. It takes an understanding and an application of biblical principles in order for God to look at us and say, that is a mature person. Now you may be thinking, why is this important? Why should you be concerned about it? You come to church on pretty much a regular basis. You give when you can. So why should we be concerned about spiritual maturity? And the answer is, based on Matthew chapter 25, Jesus is going to judge each one of us based on what we did with the abilities He gave us and the opportunities that He provided us. He is going to say, this is what I gave you. What did you do with it? Not what did anybody else do with it, but what did you do with what I gave you? And we want to be able to say that we used our abilities and our resources to the fullest. So we're going to look at 8 principles of spiritual growth and maturity. And if my voice doesn't hold out, there will be 6. Strange thing, I go out to my truck this morning, there's pollen all over the thing. It's October. And there's pollen all over the windshield of my truck. I guess we live in the very deep south, don't we? So it may be down in my throat. So number 1, spiritual maturity is Jesus living in you. Spiritual maturity is Jesus living in you. This is the first step in the process of spiritual growth and maturity. Before we can imitate Jesus on the outside, He must first be on the inside, right? Spiritual growth is a matter of habitation. It is a matter of getting Jesus inside of you. And that happens when we're baptized. So this is Galatians 3:27. It says, all of you who were baptized into Christ, have clothed yourselves with Christ. And so the first step to maturity is being baptized. Being baptized, we practice baptism by immersion, although I don't wear a white gown. I don't know. Should we get some white gowns, Stephen? I don't know about that. We just wear chest waders, all right? And we baptize by immersion because that's how it was done in the New Testament day. At that point in time, Jesus enters your life and He begins to help you in the spiritual growth process through prayer, Bible study, and service. In 1 Corinthians 3:16 it says, you yourselves are God's temple. And watch this. God's Spirit lives in you. You cannot transform yourself into a mature believer. It takes two things. Number one, the Holy Spirit in you and the application of God's Word, and that begins when you make the choice to be baptized. So the first step in spiritual development and growth and maturity is saying, I want to be baptized. And then number two is spiritual maturity is working out my part of salvation. It's working out my part of salvation. In your spiritual growth, you have a part and God has a part. There are some things that only God can do, and there are some things that only you can do because certain choices have to be made. So both of these are brought out in Philippians 2. And it says this. Continue. Paul, writing to Christians in the city of Philippi, ancient Greece. Continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you to will and to act according to His good purpose. So they're underlined, but if you would circle work out and work in, and notice how we have a part in working out and God has a part in working in. Now, if you go to work out at the gym, and it's obvious many of you don't. I know what you're saying. Every finger that I point at you, there are 5 fingers pointing back at me. I know it. But if we were to go and work out at a gym, let me rephrase that. Let me be a little more optimistic. When we go to work out at a gym, you are not going to create muscle out of nothing. You are going to the gym to develop the muscle you already have, right? I'm just using this muscle as an example. But you have muscle right here. You have the muscle. And you're working out at the gym and whatever else you do at the gym while you watch the news or something, jog on the treadmill. You are building that muscle. So, when you were baptized, and you saw a picture of the guy getting baptized, when you were baptized, you were given salvation. God gave you salvation. You rendered obedience. God said, I am giving you the gift of salvation. You are now in possession of salvation. You have to choose to do the spiritual exercises that are necessary in order to build what you have been given. And for the most part, and there could be some exceptions, I suppose, you are as close to God as you choose to be. And it is your choice to exercise your gifts and be involved in the church ministries that promote personal growth as well as benefit other people. Now, a part of our job as a church is to provide some tools for you to encourage your spiritual growth. And what are some of those tools we provide? Well, number one, we have Bible study classes and small groups. If we were to look over the last 5 years of our small groups and Bible classes, I think that we would all be very impressed at the many different subjects that have been taught. Everything from finances to marriage to Islam to various books of the Bible. These are a part of the tools we make available to you to develop your spiritual lives. Number two, we have activities and ministries that are listed in the bulletin that you can be involved in. Another tool are these outlines. It's rare for me to preach or to teach that I don't provide an outline. I don't want to say that it's never happened, but most of the time there is an outline. And there is a reason for these outlines on Sunday and on Wednesday. It's so that we don't forget the Word of God. We have been told, do not forget what you have heard. Now, this is the passage in James 1:25. I'll let you read it silently while I get a drink of water. The man who looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues to do this, not forgetting what he has heard. Watch this. Not forgetting what he has heard, but doing it, he will be blessed in what he does. And so the outlines are to help us not to forget what we have heard. So I was thinking, well, look at that picture, that outline. Does that look familiar to you? It has that little text box above the top. So I was thinking about some reasons why we do outlines. Number one is people listen better. People listen better with an outline. And even when I don't hit a home run, and I don't hit a home run every week, some weeks it's a triple, some weeks it's a double, some weeks it's a single, and some weeks it's a plain, regular, old-fashioned strikeout. Even on the days when I strike out, at least you have something you can look at and read and get a few basic points from. And so people listen better than if it was just me lecturing to you. Number two, people remember more after writing it down. And that's why usually there's something to fill in. It's not that I'm trying to punish you and make your weekend hard. There is actually a reason behind it. When you move the pen across there, if you write something down, put something in the margin, it makes it more personal to you. Three, we cover a lot of Scripture in less time. Can you imagine how long it would take if we had to turn to every single Scripture? Can you imagine? Imagine these. Okay. Everyone turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 5. And then everybody will be turning. And then I said, okay, we're going to read the passage together, out loud. And then I read it from the New Living Translation. You read it from the New International, the King James, the New King James, the English Revised Version. Everybody's saying something different. A visitor comes in and thinks they're speaking in tongues. 4, you can review the message. And 5, The outlines prevent embarrassment because it keeps everyone equal. Holding that outline makes all of us equal, because a visitor isn't going to know where the book of Habakkuk is. And they even have trouble finding it on their Bible app. So it keeps us equal. So what we are trying to do is to make your part of working out your salvation easier. So there's God's part and there's our part. And then number 3, spiritual maturity happens in stages. It happens in stages. It's just like physical growth. You're a baby, you're a toddler, you're an adolescent, you're a teen, you're an adult. Stages in a child's development. It's true spiritually. And there's this passage in 2 Corinthians 3:18, and I chose the Message paraphrase because I love the simplicity that it uses in making this a very direct but easy to understand statement. This is what it says. Our lives are gradually becoming brighter and more beautiful as God enters our lives and we become more like Him. Now, if you will circle the word gradually. Maturity is a developmental process that you choose to be involved in that happens gradually. So it happens in stages. And then number 4 is spiritual maturity isn't a competition. This is not about you getting ahead of someone else. We're not in competition. So Paul said this in Galatians 6:4. Each one should test his own actions. Test his own actions. Not yours. You don't test mine. I'll test mine. You test yours. Our own actions. Then he can take pride in himself. And this is good pride. There's good pride as well as bad pride. Without, watch this, without comparing himself to someone else. Now, if you would circle without comparing, Christianity, Christian growth, is not a competition. Take, for example, let's say we were running a 5K. What's that? 3.1 miles, a 5K. I used to run 5Ks, and I did a 5K in 16 minutes and 17 seconds when I was 32 years old, which was a long, long, long time ago. But let's say we're doing a 5K, and maybe they gave me a senior 5-minute start. Okay. And so I'm on down, and I'm running along, slowly going along. You come up next to me, okay? And you're just bouncing, and you're happy, and this is fun. You would not look over to me and say, ha, 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 I'm going to beat you. You're slow, and I'm fast. No, that's not what you would do. You would come up next to me, and you would say, Bruce, keep going, hang in there, and don't give up. And that's how it is spiritually. We are not competing with each other. We are encouraging one another. Spiritual maturity is about me testing my actions against God's standard, the Bible, not yours. It's not me comparing myself to you. And I stopped comparing myself to others a long time ago, and I'll tell you why. I always ended up coming out on the short end of the stick. And I hate always being at the bottom of the stick. So I just gave up the comparison game because it never worked for me. We are together encouraging one another in our spiritual growth and development. As each of us test our actions against God's standard, the Word. And then number 5, spiritual maturity is a continual set of habits. It's a continual set of habits. Daily prayer, Bible reading, Bible study, for better or for worse, our spiritual lives are the sum total of our habits. Let me say that again. Our spiritual lives are the sum total of our habits. You say you want to be a great dad. And that's a wonderful thing, and that's a wonderful desire. But unless you develop the habit of spending time with your children, you're never going to be a great dad. It doesn't matter how much desire you have. You may desire to be a mature believer, but without the habits, it won't happen, no matter how much desire you have. So the Bible talks about habits. And it says this in Acts 10, verse 2. This is the Message paraphrase. This is Cornelius. It says he was a thoroughly good man. This was before he was even a Christian. He won't even be baptized till later in the chapter. But he was a thoroughly good man. He had led everyone in his house to live worshipfully before God. Was always helping people in need. And had the habit of prayer. Had the habit of prayer. This is one of the reasons why he's going to be receptive to the gospel that Peter brings to his house. This is Acts 17, verse 2. According to his usual habit, Paul went to the synagogue. In Hebrews 10:25, it says, let us not give up the habit of meeting together, as some are doing. Instead, let us encourage one another all the more. So habits can be good. And research shows that it takes approximately 6 weeks for an action to become a habit. And the reason that some people aren't growing or developing spiritually is because they have never broken through that 6-week barrier. And by the way, 6 weeks, are you ready for this? Is approximately 40 days. Isn't that interesting? Because that's a significant number in the Bible. And you may know how true this is when it comes to eating right and exercising. Do it for 5 or 6 days and kind of give up, and start again, give up. If you can keep going and break through that 6-week barrier, there is a good chance that you have developed the habit that you're going to be able to continue. So maturity is a continual set of positive habits. Good. Then number 6 is spiritual maturity involves other people. What do I have? Okay, believers. Yeah, that'd be good. That's better than people. Involves other believers. Over 50 times in the New Testament, the phrase one another is used. Love one another, rebuke one another, pray for one another, greet one another. There are some things you can't effectively do by yourself. What makes New Testament Christianity different? I said New Testament Christianity. I didn't just say Christianity. What makes New Testament Christianity different from other religions is its association with people. In some religions, the way that you become holy is you separate yourself from other people. And the more you separate yourself, the more holy you are. Live in a monastery, live in a cave, be celibate, stay away from sinful human beings. And if you do that, you will be so spiritual. And then Jesus came along. He was in the marketplace. He went to parties. He had a good time. In fact, they even said that guy is a glutton and a wine drinker. The Son of God's not supposed to be having that much fun. He went to weddings. He hung out with sinners as well as believers. So Christian maturity is not about separating yourself from other people, but it's about being an example among non-believers and believers alike. And it's only through our relationships with other people that we learn to love the unlovely, to be patient with the irritable, and to be joyful among the psychotic. I thought you would like that, joyful among the psychotic. Some of you looked over to family members. And so the church is here to encourage us in the spiritual development and growth. This is Ephesians 4:16. It says, under his direction, God, the whole body, the church, is fitted together perfectly, as each part does its own special work. It helps the other parts grow, so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. No human part grows by itself. It has to be connected to other parts. My fingers do not independently maintain themselves. My hand does not independently maintain itself, nor does the wrist, or the forearm, or the elbow, or the shoulder. All of these parts are connected to other parts. That's why it works, at least relatively well. No church member grows alone. There has to be a connection with other members of the church body. So spiritual maturity involves other believers. And you're having a coming here, it's great. You're doing the right thing. It's great. I just want to encourage you. You're doing great. And then number 7. Spiritual maturity is doing, not just believing. It's not just believing, it's doing. It's not just intelligence, facts, and knowledge. It's acting on our intelligence, facts, and knowledge, right? So this is Matthew 7:21. It says, and by the way, this is a little scary. I don't mean to scare you, but I got a little scared just kind of reading this. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord. Whoa. Can you imagine people say, Lord, Lord. And that sounds good to me. But not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, that's interesting. But only he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. So there is more to Christianity than calling yourself a Christian. And get this, there is more to Christianity than putting a fish sticker on your bumper. You know those fish bumper stickers? You only do business with people who have a fish sticker, right? And have you ever been like going down Hillcrest or something, and a car comes by, shoo, and it has like Jesus saves and the fish, and there's 65 out here on Hillcrest, shoo, like that. Whoa, wow. If you're going to speed, would you take the Port City bumper sticker off? That's all I'm saying. So in Jesus' day, we have bumper stickers. I just said that as an illustration. I mean, we have bumper stickers. So back in Jesus' day, there was a group of religious elite. They were called the Pharisees. And I know today in English, Pharisee means a hypocrite. We say, somebody says Pharisee, and everybody goes, oh. But if we had lived back in the first century, you said Pharisee. Whoa, wow, Pharisee. Everybody wanted their son to become a Pharisee because you are fair. They are fair, you see. Yeah, that's profound. I know. And so, they had all of this Bible knowledge. Educated and knew the scriptures, and much of it memorized. And Jesus came along and he said, you know what? And this is Bruce's true to the manuscript's paraphrase. Jesus came along and said, you know what? You guys don't even know the Bible or the power of God. And they were shocked because they had so much of it memorized. But you see, it's not just intellect, facts, and knowledge. It is acting on our intellect, facts, and knowledge. You know what their real problem was? They had knowledge without love. And that's dangerous, just to have knowledge. Because 1 Corinthians 8:1 says, this is the New Living Translation, I love this. While knowledge may make us feel important, knowledge, wrap yourself in knowledge. Oh, come over here, beautiful knowledge. I love you, knowledge. Oh, knowledge, you're incredible. While knowledge makes us feel important, it is love that really builds up the church. And so spiritual maturity is doing, not just believing. That's why James said in his book that the demons believe too. So if we're just believing, we're not even ahead of demons. We want to be ahead of the demons, right? And then number 8 is that spiritual growth is seasonal. It's seasonal. In other words, it happens in cycles. So let me use as an example my yard. The grass in my yard does not grow continuously. There is a season of dormancy, followed by a season of growth, although this far south, things can grow at any time. But generally, the grass doesn't grow a whole lot during November, December, January, and February. Although about once during those months I have to go out and knock the weeds down along the sidewalk. You know how those little leafy leaves grow? Grass is dead. They got these little leaves growing, you got to knock them down. But generally there's a period of dormancy. The way that it is with our yards is the way that it is in our spiritual development. This is Genesis 8:22. This is after the flood in Noah's day. It said, as long as the earth remains, there will be springtime and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, day and night. That is a physical principle that applies to your spiritual growth. We grow in cycles. And the reason that I'm emphasizing this, don't lay a bunch of guilt on yourself if you are in a season of dormancy. You may be going through a financial crisis. You may be going through a relationship crisis. You may be going through a health crisis. Don't get yourself all worked up that you're not able to do all of the things that you would normally do. We go through seasons. We go through cycles. There are times when things are budding in your life and you are absolutely doing great. And then there's winter time when the days are short and not very much grows. And you can't be too hard on yourself during the winter time of life. Because all human beings struggle. We are all flawed and sinful. Nobody's health is perfect. Nobody's job is perfect. Nobody's relationship, nobody's marriage is perfect. So as you deal with these things, don't be overly hard on yourself. God understands. And we understand too. So how do you know when you are spiritually mature? The same way you know when a plant is mature. When is a plant mature? When it produces fruit after its own kind. That's when it's mature. So what is the spiritual fruit of maturity? Well, when you are doing these 7 manifestations of the Spirit, you can know you are mature. Now, nobody's doing it perfectly. We're all sinful. But when these things are in your life, you can know you're mature. It's called the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. When you see yourself manifesting these, then you can know you are mature. Continue the habits that you have developed. You are incredible. Do not give up. I'm talking about giving up your faith. Okay? There may be some things you need to give up. It depends on what exactly we're talking about. Do not give up your faith in God. And if you're in a season of struggle, do not be so hard on yourself. And I promise you, when you come, that we will have some kind of an encouraging word to build you up. And maybe it's not just something so spectacular that it blows you away, but if there's something in God's Word, just a little something that keeps you hanging on a little bit longer, that is a good thing. Do not give up. So Stephen is going to lead us in an invitation hymn. And if you have a particular need, perhaps it's putting Christ on in baptism or prayers, we want to assist you in any way that we can while we stand and sing.